It makes a huge difference, especially on a platform like Furnished Finder, where a lot of your
Before you list on Furnished Finder, you need a plan to protect the rental deposit. I'll tell you how to do that in this video, as well as 2 other best practices for setting up your rental before you list on Furnished Finder. And yes, I'm aware of Furnished Finder's worry-free waiver / damage deposit / damage protection deposit, I should say, / WAVO. The thing has many names, but I don't use it. And the reason why I don't use it is because I think the terms and conditions would make it too hard for me to get any money back from the actual service. So in my opinion, it's actually not a very good product for landlords. The rental deposit is so important because it protects you from lost rent, junk removal services, neglected yards, and damaged property. And the deposit exists to protect you, the landlord, from any damage to your property. And it is a fully refundable deposit if the renter leaves the property in the condition they assumed it in. Most states actually have pretty strict laws around this stuff, meaning that there are hefty punishments for landlords that mishandle the deposit because the state wants the renter to be protected. So if a landlord ends up in court and it has nothing to do with evictions, but it does have something to do with what the landlord did wrong, my assumption is that 90% of the time it has to do with the mishandling of the deposit. But fear not, there is a very easy way to protect yourself from this, and I'll tell you about it in a sec. Since you are watching this video, my assumption is that you are listing your property on Furnished Finder because you want the benefits of a midterm rental, which is a monthly furnished rental. So the benefits are 1, increased rent, and 2, an attractive renter pool. And that's what excited me about midterm renters when I started targeting my rentals to them in 2017, and then started writing books in 2020 about how this is the rental model of the future. I believe that because I think people want convenience, and for a lot of us, walking in and out of a fully furnished rental is a lot more convenient and appealing than dragging furniture we may or may not care about across cities, states, and the country. I fully understand why people have gotten so excited about this model in the past few years, and I've worked with a lot of new landlord clients to help them get rented from the 3 big platforms that dominate the midterm rental space. But in doing that, there are 3 important actions and decisions a landlord can make before they even list their property that will help them have a much smoother rental. And you want a smooth rental. I call myself a lazy landlord because I want my rentals to work for me, not the other way around. I want to set them up right and then not think about them. And if you also feel this way, keep watching because that's a big goal when I make all of my content is how are my properties going to work for me versus me working for the properties. By the way, I'm Erin Spendlin. If you are new here, welcome. If you learned something, please like this video. If you want any of my books, consulting help, access to my free lease, or my furniture checklist for rentals, I will add all the important and needed links to the top comment of this video. Also, I'm going to list a few products that can help your listing stand out, and I'm going to link to those products. If you purchase any of those products off of the links that I provide, the cost is going to be the same to you, but I will get a small cut from Amazon or YouTube for your purchase. And if you decide to go that route, thank you. All right, let's get back to the deposit and how I was saying that most landlords that get in trouble with their rentals do so by mishandling the deposit. So the government gets really pissed when you mishandle the deposit because the deposit is on loan to you. It's a loan from the renter to the landlord. And it's only for landlords to use if they need to make themselves whole at the end of the rental for lost rent, property damage, yard damage, etc. And using the deposit to correct a situation is fine. What is not fine is using the deposit for absolutely anything else. So some landlords will improperly borrow against the deposit, and this is very similar to when lawyers get in trouble, which is that some lawyers will borrow against the retainer, against their client's retainer. And the assumption for both these landlords and lawyers is that they'll pay the money back into the account by the time it needs to be returned. Well, then something happens, the money isn't there, and the renter is like, where's my deposit? The landlord doesn't have a very good explanation. All of a sudden, you start to see real weird things come back on why the deposit was held back. And barring evictions, to me, this is almost always when landlords end up in court. So the best way to protect yourself from this is to establish a bank account just for that property. The bank account will have a checking and a savings, and the operating costs, so your rents, mortgage, expenses, will come in and out of the checking account. And just as a note, you can also pay yourself through the checking account. Now, the deposit sits in a savings, and it is never touched unless you need to pay yourself for lost income, damage, etc. And then you have access to it. So again, the deposit is there to make you whole, so don't hesitate as a landlord to use it as long as you can document and record why you are charging against that deposit. And some states require this documentation and have standards for what this documentation is. If that's something you need help looking up, let me know. But even in the states where this isn't required, this is absolutely a best practice to document why you're using the deposit. Some of you are going to absolutely hate this advice. The question for you is, do you hate this advice more than you hate sitting vacant for long stretches of time? Do you hate it more than you hate having to pay your own mortgage and not having a renter help offset that cost? So assuming your mortgage is $2,500 each month and you don't take this advice and you don't get renters because of it, was the fear that held you off from doing this, was it worth the $2,500 that you now have to pay to the mortgage? And more important, do you think that allowing for this advice I'm about to give you, would result in $2,500 worth of damages? Because if it doesn't, you should strongly consider the idea that I'm about to propose. So I've been advocating for this for years now. You can actually see it in my first book, my second book, my third book, etc. I've been talking about it for a while, but it's actually starting to show up in home searches. I was talking about it in a rental perspective, but I think it holds. So it's not just showing up in home searches, but it's becoming a massive part of the buyer decision tree. And I feel and have felt that it is the same for rentals. So I'm both about to tell you what this is that renters and buyers care so much about, but also know that I'm going to tell you 3 ways to optimize for what I'm recommending. So this that I'm speaking about is allowing for pets in your rentals. If you are confused on this, let me clear the deck. Americans really like their animals, and your particular renter base, so educated professionals that can move around, they tend to have animals. Once you have kids, you can't move around or try out new rentals or new cities or visit loved ones for 1 to 2 month stretches because they have kids. Now, if you're in the insurance space, that's a different question, but still, those people also typically tend to have pets because often when people have kids, they also have pets. So a lot of the renter base, regardless of what model you're renting in, have pets, and they want your rental to allow for pets. And allowing for pets is also a great way to knock out a lot of your competition. I did a little study on this a couple of years ago, and just looking at a couple of major metros throughout the US, if you went on to Airbnb and put in filters for this, you would knock out 30 to 50% of your competition if you allowed for pets, meaning 30 to 50% of the market is not allowing for pets. Also, in a market where sellers are having a hard time selling their places, which is us in the United States right now, we are seeing more and more people become accidental landlords because those sellers are converting from wanting to sell to becoming landlords because they're frustrated with how long it's taking. So accidental landlords then are becoming extra competition for you. Or you may very well be an accidental landlord and you're like, there's probably a bunch of other accidental landlords. And because of that, it's not just hard to sell your property, it can also be hard to rent your property. And one way to beat this is to allow for animals and entice renters based off of your animal or pet friendliness. So then you have to ask yourself, am I more at risk of losing $2,500 this month because I have to pay the mortgage myself, or because I get a renter, that renter has a dog, and then that dog does more than $2,500 worth of damages? So I know which way I would take that bet. So now let me tell you about how you optimize for pets. And sorry, cat lovers, I'm going to speak about dogs here, but hopefully the info I give you can help you brainstorm on how to make a place attractive for cats as well. In your listing, you want to feature dog-friendly items. If your property, and this would likely be a single family house or a townhome here, if your property has a fenced yard, you want to show that. You want to show it in the photos, and you also want to call it out in the listing. You want to reference that the dog will love playing in the backyard because people love seeing dogs happy and they love thinking about their dogs happy. So this is a way to endear them to your property. And the way to do that is to talk about how much their dog will love the backyard. Second, if possible, add a doggy door and include it in your professional photos. And do not make me lecture you again about needing professional photos. You do, trust me, you do. It makes a huge difference, especially on a platform like Furnished Finder, where a lot of your competition is not using professional photos, so you will absolutely stand out, and it is a minimal expense for the marketing value it will bring your property. Enough about that. Okay, and then third, a dedicated dog space, and show that in the photos. I love this particular product because it's a medium price point. It looks fine, which is fine for a rental. You can put stuff on top of it, and you can also show to your future renter that they can put leashes, dog bags, toys, etc. in here, while the animal also has a crate. So people will show kitchen cabinet doors open. I always hate that because there's no reason to show that a kitchen has plates behind the cabinet door. We know that a furnished rental, there are plates in the kitchen. If there isn't, there's a huge problem. But in this case, I would actually open the drawers and show that you have a roll of dog bags in here, etc. So just continue to reinforce that this is a property meant for dogs and dog lovers. And I think that this product is particularly great and so smart because for people driving to your property, they may not need to bring a crate. They may not want to bring a crate. So the fact that your property already has a crate is really useful to me. And feature this in your photos so people see this. All right, I hope you're still with me. I hope you haven't dumped me yet for saying that you should save yourself some money and allow for dogs. Some people have very, very strong feelings about that, and they are like an absolute no to dogs. But I think that this kind of thinking is out of touch with how people regard their dogs now. And also, a lot of your competition is converting to allowing for dogs. So I feel like when you don't, you're kind of being left behind. Not only are you not knocking out your competition, but you're also going to find yourself in an old school mentality, and the market is going to move forward without you. Dogs are like family to a lot of people. So now is the time to make that adjustment. Third and final piece of advice that you need before you put your property on Furnished Finder is to establish a pricing tier. And that pricing tier should have 3 different rates. So this tier will be your basement price, your regular price, and your reach price. And I want to flag here that if you are buying a property right now, then your basement price plus utilities matter. It does not matter, however, if you already own the place and you have to rent. The reason why this makes sense is if you have any control over this, which you do if you are in the process of purchasing an investment, then you can decline to buy the property if it doesn't hit the numbers. And you can put more down on the property or the rental so that your mortgage is lower and then you cash flow. So those are ways that you can impact your cash flow and increase your monthly income. But too often I see people that already own the rental and they shoot themselves in the foot by not adjusting their price because it would fall below a threshold that they have set for themselves. The following thing that I'm about to say is not going to be fun to hear, but you need to hear it, and that's that renters don't care what your mortgage and utilities cost are. Now, you may ultimately decide that you don't want to do a midterm rental because the cost of the mortgage and the utilities makes it not worth it to you, but that has no bearing on what the renters will pay. So if you establish that, then walk away from the model. Don't expect someone else to adjust to it. More to the point of this section, though, is that these properties are seasonal. There is a high, a medium, and a low time. So for most people, the high time is summer. The medium time is shoulder season, or I should say shoulder seasons, so fall and spring. And the low is right now, November and December. And that's because of the holidays and the weather. So November and December are the absolute basement of costs when you're pricing a rental. So assuming your place rents roughly 80 to 85% of the time, mine rents at a 92% occupancy, but that's because I've been at it forever and I also know when to adjust. So assume you will get 80 to 85% occupancy if you are renting this cold. And if you do that, assign your rents the following way. So November and December, your lowest prices. January, March, and October, you're going to hit those mid-tier prices. And then April through September, you're going to have your high prices, so your reach prices, and you may have to adjust April and September accordingly. And so once you have your pricing tier, you can then apply it to your rentals. And so then there's no problem taking a renter in the low or mid-tier section, especially if they're renting for a long time, because you'll still scoop up that extra amount of money in the high season because you are priced correctly, meaning that if they come in at a lower rate, it will extend into the higher rate when the higher rate seasons get in.
And also, just having a good idea of what your rental is worth in different parts of the year is important, because much like a short-term rental, a midterm rental has a different pricing tier depending on when the time of the year is, and we shouldn't stick to just a static price all year long. That doesn't make sense in the furnished rental space because people aren't staying for a full year. All right, I hope that was helpful. And if you are looking for more reasons as to why this model, this midterm rental model, has grown so much since 2020 and want to know if your property still makes sense for midterm rentals, I recommend watching this video.